Tech news with husband and wife. NextGen Cloud secures $45 million for AI infrastructure expansion. A London-based NextGen Cloud has raised $45 million in a Series A funding round led by More and More Investment Group. The investment aims to enhance NextGen's NVIDIA-powered AI infrastructure across Europe, addressing the growing demand for scalable and cost-effective GPU-as-a-service solution, which personally, I did not know that GPU as a service was actually like a desired service. I didn't.
So basically, to understand why a GPU as a service is even something that people want, I think we should look at what a GPU as a service does. Basically means you're outsourcing the hardware for GPUs, which process data like augmented reality, VR, CAD programs. They process CGI and video transcoding. This allows smaller companies and startups to utilize these high-end hardware technologies without actually having to make the investment in all that hardware. You can basically think of it as AWS for GPUs. So something else that I decided to look up after we recorded this was that what the difference between a server farm and a GPU farm is. All GPU farms are server farms, but not all server farms are GPU farms. Basically, a GPU farm focuses specifically on GPUs optimization, which is generally for AI training or 3D rendering.
Well, that might be because you're thinking of GPUs for video games, but this sounds like...
I'm thinking of it like for, well, also Bitcoin, right? Because there are some, because the GPU processes power faster than the CPU, right?
Mm-hmm.
So a GPU doesn't particularly process faster than a CPU. What the difference is, a CPU has a processor that is doing tasks synchronously versus a GPU has specialized processors that are batch processing data all at the same time. So an analogy would be a CPU is 8 strong workers doing tasks one at a time versus a GPU is 1,000 specialized workers doing the same task at once.
So, oh, just graphics? Is Bitcoin based off of graphics?
I think so.
Oh, because I thought it was Bitcoin was literally algorithms that it was solving.
I don't know. Well, now I'm confused. Because I know CPU and GPUs obviously
they're two different things, but a CPU is...
Yeah, I'm not sure exactly what coins are.
Because it has to rely on the RAM, right? But a GPU has RAM built in. Okay, I'll have to fact check that.
CPUs do not rely on RAM to process information because RAM just stores information and it's the processing unit, the CPU, that processes it. So GPUs are more energy efficient than CPUs per operation. GPUs also offer much higher bandwidth, which is really important with AI because AI requires data to do the thing it was meant to do. I don't know how to say that better, but GPUs also allow for batch processing, which is processing multiple inputs at once, which is also necessary in AI. Another analogy we could use here is a CPU is 1 trained artist doing a painting, and a GPU is 1,000 interns painting a square simultaneously.
How might NextGen Cloud expansion affect smaller European AI startups and competitors? Well, I guess we have to understand what the GPU as a service does for AI. If it's the way that Bitcoin works, it just processes it much faster with a lower energy.
Well, I figure you're mostly using the GPU as a service to generate images using AI rather than... Because for AI specifically, we're talking about AI generated images.
But I feel like it can't, the GPU as a service can't just be for AI images. It's got to be for documentation too, because I mean, it has to be using an OCR, right, to scan stuff and scrape it? Because not everything is like text coded. Some of it's images, some of it. So a GPU probably can scan and process that data faster.
Sure, but I would imagine for AI purposes that stuff is already hand and in their memory or whatever you call the AI memory that they use to pull from. I don't think they're gonna like.
Well, here, wait. Do you know how ChatGPT works? Because ChatGPT tries to predict each character, and then based off the results, it then formulates what the sentence could be.
Sure,
so I'm
but
wondering if it is like Bitcoin, where it's just solving these algorithms, because ChatGPT and other AI systems are just one big algorithm of prediction. But you're insisting that we are still using the GPU as a visual processing unit.
yes.
Graphical processing unit.
Hmm.
Okay. Is the reliance on NVIDIA hardware a strength or potential vulnerability in terms of supply chain or innovation agility?
You're always gonna be vulnerable when you're relying on one company.
Yeah, and I thought NVIDIA was not doing well.
I don't know if they're not doing well.
Also, NVIDIA is actually doing very well. They actually have about 80 to 90% of the AI chip market versus AMD, which isn't considered a competitor in the AI chip market. However, AMD is known for having greater raw processing for the price in terms of gaming PCs and other types of traditional graphics card type processing.
Well, but I think right now AMD's video cards are more raw power, especially for the price.
It's just interesting that we say something like that, and then we also are like, wait, why? So,
Why what?
why are we using this GPU for AI? I'm just
Maybe-
confused because I
maybe
want to
NVIDIA
know.
makes a video card specifically for AI purposes, whereas AMD
Well, wouldn't
maybe
it
works
just be
better
an
for
AI
gaming.
card at that point, not a GPU?
So, although AI cards are technically just something I made up, NVIDIA has released what's called tenure cores, which are built specifically to accelerate matrix operations in AI training and inference. So basically, GPUs are just really good at math.
Like, I guess
What's an AI card?
I just made it up.
Okay.
I'm like, why is it specifically a
'Cause
GPU?
It probably sits in the GPU slot.
What do you think a GPU slot's called?
KTX,
PCI?
PCI Express.
Yeah, PCI and PCI Express. Does funding align with Europe's broader strategy for AI sovereignty?
What does that mean?
Well, sovereignty is like its own thing, and no one thing controls that thing.
Mm-hmm.
So, like a sovereign AI would be like decentralized, I believe.
So apparently, I describe sovereign as decentralized, which I guess easily confused on my part, but sovereign as an adjective is actually self-governing, autonomous, and independent. Sovereign AI is supposed to grant control, security, trust, transparency, and strategic autonomy. So for Europe to be trying to make their own sovereign AI, I think that's really incredible, because then they don't have to rely on the US or China for their AI. And if you're working with sensitive data or anything like that, like the medical field, FERPA, all that kind of stuff, you don't want your data hosted by a whole nother country that can do whatever they want. So I think that the EU doing this is a signal for other countries to realize that they need to have their own sovereign AI as well.
And that means no one person, government, organization can control how it processes.
Except Europe.
Except for Europe, which makes it sound a little crazy. But I don't think I have enough information here to know how it's going to affect the sovereignty of AI, especially if we're only talking about Europe.
Is this like a specific company that's doing it?
Yes, NextGen Cloud.
So I think here we can recap and say, if NextGen decides to enable other companies to create sovereign AIs and to develop AI technology and its use cases, instead of, say, absorbing smaller competitors, I think NextGen really has the future outlook in mind. One more thing before we go, I would like to bring up the idea of pairing AI energy consumption with sustainable resources and goals. Since AI processing takes so much energy, we should be prioritizing using sustainable resources for AI energy consumption. Which then brings me to the Hoover Dam, which was used to hold back water, but the dam was made with millions of buckets of cement. And if you know anything about cement, you know that it has to be cured to work properly. Otherwise, it's no better than dirt mixed with water, I guess. But when you cure this cement, it becomes such a strong, solid structure. So for the Hoover Dam, they had to figure out how to cure the cement and continue to build. Because if they were gonna let it cure the way that cement normally cures, it would have taken well over 100 years to cure, which wasn't gonna work. So what they did was they installed pipes, and these pipes, like a heated floor, ran hot water through them, which then heated and cured the concrete as they were pouring it. So that brings me back to AI, sustainable goals. What innovative ways can we combine AI energy consumption and sustainable resources? How can we integrate the future with the future?